All right, let's dive into something that's going to completely change how you look at the world. We're going to explore a new way of thinking about global power that throws out the old rulebook. It asks us to stop thinking about alliances and start thinking about systems engineering.
So let me just start with this one question. What if a nation's real strength isn't its military or even its economy, but how good its national operating system is? It's a huge idea, and if it's true, well, it changes pretty much everything.
And to get our heads around this, we're going to start with a bit of a mystery. Our source material points to a future intervention in Venezuela in 2026, and it says it had nothing to do with oil. Instead, it was an operation called rival stack denial. What on earth does that even mean? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out.
Look, to even begin to unpack a phrase like that, we have to face a hard truth. The old rules are breaking down. The way we've been taught to think about global power, the old maps, they just don't work anymore. We need a whole new framework.
And here is the fundamental shift. We're moving from a world that's all about politics and alliances to a world that's about competing architectures. It's less about who a country's friends are and way more about how well its own internal systems are engineered to work together as a single, coherent machine.
This new approach is so specific, it even has its own formula. It's called the Zonal Coherence Model. And the equation looks simple, but it is incredibly powerful. N plus C plus T has to be greater than S. This little formula right here, this might just be the key to predicting which countries are going to thrive and which are going to break.
So let's crack this code. N, C, and T. These are the soft parts of a country. N is the narrative, the shared story and identity that holds people together. C is coordination. Do all the pieces of government and the economy actually work in sync? And T is trust. Do people voluntarily buy into the system? As long as those three things are stronger than S, the shock load from all the crises hitting from the outside, a nation holds together. And you can actually score this stuff. It's called the Zone Stability Index. And check this out. China and the US have almost identical scores. But, and this is the fascinating part, they get that stability in totally different ways. China's strength comes from its incredibly high internal coordination, its software. The US, on the other hand, relies more on its massive physical foundation, its hardware. Two totally different architectures, both stable, for now, but each with its own Achilles heel.
So if we're going to think of a nation as an engineered system, the best way to do it is to think of a computer. Every country has its own unique operating system, complete with both hardware and software.
And that operating system has two critical layers. You've got the physical layer, that's the hardware. We're talking ports, power grids, data centers, the actual physical stuff. But then, running on top of all that, you have the coherence layer. That's the software. That's the narrative, the coordination, and the trust we were just talking about. In this new world, real power, real sovereignty means you control the whole thing, the full stack.
And now, that weird phrase from the beginning? It's all going to make sense. The operation in Venezuela wasn't about seizing oil, the hardware. It was about stopping a rival operating system, a Chinese and Russian-backed stack, from being installed in America's backyard. It was basically a geostrategic software conflict.
Okay, but what happens when a nation's operating system starts to crash? When its software, its narrative, its coordination, its trust starts to fall apart? Well, according to this model, it gets caught in a really, really dangerous cycle. They call it the enforcement trap. It starts when outside shocks just overwhelm the system's coherence. So, what does the state do? It falls back on raw power, enforcement, the police, the military. But here is the killer feedback loop. The more you use force, the more you destroy the very trust and coordination that holds the country together. Which of course means you need even more force. It's a death spiral that hollows out a state from the inside. And there's another huge vulnerability that makes this trap almost impossible to escape. Speed. Modern crises, think cyber attacks, viral disinformation, they happen in hours, even minutes. But government bureaucracy, it moves in months, maybe years. That gap is called latency mismatch. It means leaders are always a step behind, making the enforcement trap almost inevitable.
So, is every country just doomed to fall into this trap? How do you actually build a better, more resilient system? Well, for a fascinating potential answer, the source material tells us to look north, to a proposed strategy for Canada.
It's a concept called the North Vector, and the idea is actually pretty genius. It's all about using Canada's unique geography,
like the incredibly stable rock of the Canadian Shield and all its clean energy, to build the physical foundation for a secure, sovereign national operating system. It's literally turning geologic stability into geopolitical strength.
And the plan has 4 main pillars, each tackling a different layer of the sovereignty stack. First, you secure the hardware by building sovereign data centers. Second, you secure the perimeter with a new Arctic data hub. Third, you upgrade the software, using algorithms to make the internal economy run smoother. And finally, you get a CPU upgrade. Develop a national AI to speed up decision-making and beat that latency mismatch.
The end goal here isn't just a bunch of separate projects. It's to create a single, fully integrated network, a resilient national system where the physical infrastructure, the data, and the government all work together, totally in sync.
There's a line from the source document that just hits the nail on the head. For a country like Canada, the game isn't trying to go head-to-head with superpowers. The game is to build a more efficient, more stable, more coherent internal system. You don't outcompete them. You out-cohere them. So let's pull all the way back. What's the final takeaway here? What does this massive shift from thinking about politics to thinking about engineering mean for the rest of us? The sources call it the coherence imperative. And this slide really says it all, doesn't it? The old metrics of power were things we all know: territory, resources, who your allies are. But the metrics for new power are straight out of an engineering textbook: architecture, coherence, latency, and full stack sovereignty. It's a completely different language. In this new reality, the great dividing line, the thing that separates the winners from the losers, is going to be AI. The nations that succeed will be the ones that use AI to make decisions faster and stay ahead of crises. And the losers? They'll be the ones that can't keep up, falling further and further behind until they're stuck in that enforcement death spiral. And so that brings us back to the beginning, but now we're seeing it all through a new lens. In a world that's becoming a battle of competing system architectures, the most critical question a nation can ask itself is no longer how powerful are you, but how coherent are you? And that might just be the new test for survival.